Her words, spoken with raw, unvarnished truth, silenced them. They had no comeback for the truth. As she delved deeper, Arya began to see her life before Elias not as a curse, but as a unique preparation. Her street smarts, her ability to read people, her resilience against adversity. These were invaluable tools in the cutthroat world of corporate power. She wasn't just a figurehead. She was a survivor with a sharp mind and an unwavering moral compass. And with Elias, her steady partner, strategist, and confidant, by her side, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of her past trauma and his unwavering loyalty, was deepening into something unbreakable, a shared destiny rather than a fleeting romance. Her body trembled uncontrollably, whether from the biting cold or the crushing weight of despair. She couldn't tell. She knelt in the pouring rain, sobbing, her face buried in her hands. She yearned for it all to be a nightmare, to wake up in the cramped, musty room she had called hers. But the icy rain and the rough concrete beneath her palms were undeniable, cruel reminders of reality. She felt like discarded trash on the roadside, unwanted, a burden to everyone, utterly useless. In their eyes, she was no longer a daughter. She was merely a bringer of misfortune, a scapegoat for their failures. She couldn't lift her head. She could almost hear the shattering of her last vestiges of pride and hope. The fragile peace Arya found in Elias's support, following the earth-shattering revelation of her true identity, was short-lived. Just as she began to process the enormity of her inherited legacy, the malignant shadows of her past resurfaced with a vengeance. News, however carefully contained, had a way of seeping through cracks, especially when immense wealth was involved. Her foster parents, the Davies, had somehow caught wind of her newfound status. And like vultures sensing carrion, they descended. Arya, at 29, almost 30, had a life marked by constant abandonment. She'd been left on the steps of an orphanage as an infant, where she spent the next 19 years. Even there, she was a quiet, unnoticed child, too timid to approach others, and no one ever reached out to her. She lived like a shadow until, upon graduating high school, she met her foster parents. At first, they were kind, their words a sweet promise. "Arya, we are your family now. Let's live happily together." Their gentle facade ignited a flicker of hope within her, a dream of belonging to a family. Their initial approach was insidious, a deceptive cloak of faux concern. Arya's phone, which she rarely checked due to years of avoiding unwanted calls, began to barrage her with messages. "Arya, our sweet girl. We've heard such wonderful news about you. Your loving parents are so proud. Call us. Darling, we miss you terribly." The words, dripping with a saccharine sweetness that was utterly alien to their true nature, sent a cold shiver down Arya's spine. She knew this game. They were circling, but that dream was a mirage. Their love was a cruel pretense, a means to an end. They had taken her in for the government subsidies, and when their business failed, she became their primary source of income, a human ATM. She dropped out of school, working tirelessly day and night, convenience store shifts, restaurant serving, night factory work. She took whatever she could get, every penny going to pay off their burgeoning debts. The slightest complaint would unleash a torrent of abuse. "Our business failed because you came into this house. You unlucky bitch." There was no physical violence, but their constant emotional torment slowly suffocated her spirit. She showed the messages to Elias, her hand trembling slightly. His jaw tightened as he read them. "They're testing the waters," he stated, his voice calm but with an underlying edge of steel. "Don't respond. I've already put legal measures in place, but they'll try every angle." She was treated as less than human. Rarely was she allowed to sit at the family dinner table, and her opinions were always dismissed. They saw her as nothing more than a money-making machine, a convenient scapegoat for their misfortunes. Her room was smaller and dingier than any dormitory at the orphanage. She owned no personal belongings of value and had no friends. Each morning, she woke with the same dreadful thought: what torment awaits me today? Her life was a colorless, meaningless cycle of suffering. But the Davies were relentless. When their calls went unanswered, the tone shifted. The saccharine sweetness curdled into thinly veiled threats. "We know where you work now. Arya, don't think you can just forget about us. We know everything about your past. People might be very interested to hear about your humble beginnings, unless you want that to get out. And then, the brazen demands. We need funds, a house, perhaps. You owe us, Arya. We raised you. You wouldn't be where you are without us. 10 years passed in this agonizing routine. Their debts grew, and their abuse intensified. Now, they demanded money without reason, as if she were solely responsible for their financial ruin. One day, unable to bear it any longer, she finally spoke up. I can't do this anymore. I need to live my own life. Her words ignited their fury, and that night, she found herself out on the street. Each message, each unanswered call, chipped away at Arya's fragile composure. The cruel words they had once used, branding her as worthless and unlucky, echoed in her mind. The memories of endless labor, of hunger, of their cold, dismissive glares, flooded back with a horrifying vividness. She found herself flinching at unexpected sounds, her sleep becoming fitful and plagued by nightmares. Elias would often find her staring blankly into space, her eyes shadowed with old pain. Now, she had nowhere to go. The little money she possessed would barely last a few days. All she had was a worn backpack and the invisible scars etched into her soul. She walked aimlessly through the rain, unable to distinguish her tears from the falling drops. All hope seemed to have vanished. A chilling thought settled in: if she simply collapsed and died in the rain, no one would find her, and no one would remember her existence. She stood alone, at the very edge of her world. Are you all right? He'd ask, his voice soft with concern, gently placing a hand on her arm. The night Arya was cast out by her foster parents blurred into an endless, desolate maze. For days, she drifted, a ghost in the city. Her nights spent shivering on cold park benches or seeking fleeting warmth in the cramped corners of public bathhouses. The meager money she possessed dwindled rapidly, leaving her perpetually battling the gnawing pangs of hunger and the biting chill that seeped into her bones. Yet, it wasn't the physical hardship that tormented her most. It was the profound, suffocating loneliness, the crushing realization that no one wanted her, that she was utterly alone in the world. Her foster mother's venomous words, branding her as useless, echoed relentlessly in her mind, and she found herself beginning to believe them. Arya would just shake her head, unable to articulate the suffocating fear that gripped her. They're everywhere, Elias. Their voices. They're in my head. They make me feel like I'm still that scared, worthless girl they kicked out. She turned her back on the world, on everyone. Every outstretched hand, every offered kindness. She instinctively perceived as a veiled attempt to exploit her, a sinister echo of the betrayal she'd endured. The casual cruelties of the orphanage, the relentless abuse from her foster parents, had forged an impenetrable wall of mistrust around her heart. She trusted no one. Friends, family, any form of relationship. They were all illusions. Fragile constructs designed to disappoint. To survive. She retreated further into herself, guarding her emotions, keeping everyone at a distance. She existed as if encased in a transparent glass cage, isolated from the rest of humanity. He would hold her, his warmth a comforting presence against the chill of her resurfacing trauma. He understood that this wasn't just about legal threats. It was about the psychological warfare they had waged on her for years. But life, stubbornly, refused to cease. She had to survive. Arya desperately hunted for work, taking any odd job she could find. Dawn saw her delivering newspapers, mornings found her scrubbing restaurant floors, and by night, she cleaned aisles in sprawling supermarkets. Her body ached perpetually, a dull, constant throb of chronic fatigue. Even when sleep finally claimed her, it was light, restless, punctuated by the fear that her few possessions might vanish. What little money she earned was swallowed by the rent for her tiny, damp room in a rundown Goshiwan, a cramped, suffocating space that, paradoxically, was her only sanctuary. The Davies grew bolder. They tried to visit her at the company, posing as concerned relatives, only to be politely but firmly turned away by Elias's vigilant security. They even attempted to approach her during her lunch breaks, lurking outside the building, their faces contorted with a mixture of desperate greed and seething resentment. Arya would see them, their familiar, predatory smiles, and her breath would catch, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was a woman of immense newfound power, yet in their presence, she regressed. feeling small and helpless again. About a month into her grim routine, she stumbled upon a late-night convenience store advertisement in a local flyer. She went for the interview without hesitation. The store manager, seeing the exhaustion etched on her face and the deep-seated weariness in her eyes, sighed softly but hired her. The hours were grueling, from late evening until dawn, alone in the silent store, but the solitude, the lack of human interaction, offered a strange kind of peace. Here, she felt she could finally breathe, if only for a few hours. "They won't stop," Arya confided in Elias one night, her voice barely a whisper. "They'll never stop. They won't just take money, they'll try to ruin me. Elias! They want to tear down everything I'm building." The tension was escalating, a suffocating presence that threatened to consume her. She knew that simply ignoring them wouldn't work. A confrontation was inevitable, and the thought filled her with a profound dread, forcing her to question if she truly had the strength to face the demons of her past head-on. Life in the convenience store was a bleak, monotonous cycle. Each day, she arrived, performed her duties like an automaton, then returned to her goshiwon to sleep, only to wake and repeat the process. Hope remained an elusive phantom, its absence a constant ache. She often wondered why she continued, what purpose her existence served. Her only goal was to simply endure, to survive another day. The fear of confronting her foster parents, the Davies, had coiled in Arya's stomach like a venomous snake, tightening with each passing day. Their relentless calls and threatening messages were a constant reminder of the power they once held over her, threatening to drag her back into the abyss of her past. Yet, Elias Thorne's unwavering presence beside her was a powerful antidote. He saw her fear, but he also saw her growing resolve. He knew that this confrontation was not just a legal necessity, but a vital step in Arya's emotional healing. One pre-dawn shift, when the store was deserted, Arya found herself drifting, head bowed at the counter. The soft chime of the doorbell startled her awake. She blinked, rubbing her eyes, expecting the usual tired customer. But this man was different. He was impeccably dressed in a sharp suit, his hair neatly combed, exuding an aura of polished calm despite the early hour. His eyes were deep and sharp, yet held a peculiar tranquility. He was a regular, always arriving at the same time, buying the same single energy drink and a small snack. She mentally dubbed him the Dawn customer. "You don't have to carry this burden alone, Arya," Elias had told her one night, his voice a steadying balm. "This isn't just about money for them. It's about control. And it's time that control ended. Permanently. We will face them together." He never spoke more than a polite greeting, never lingered. He would pay, take his items, and leave as silently as he arrived. Yet, strangely, his mere presence brought Arya a peculiar sense of stability. When it felt as though the entire world had turned its back on her, he was there, a quiet constant, a silent testament that perhaps a small piece of the world still remembered her existence. He knew nothing of her struggles, but his unwavering presence was a quiet comfort. In his familiar silhouette, Arya found herself clinging to a fragile, almost forgotten notion that even in this bleak, brutal life, a tiny seed of hope might still exist. It was the faint stir of expectation, a feeling she had long since buried. Elias, with his characteristic strategic precision, arranged the meeting. It wasn't in some grand office, but a neutral, sterile law firm conference room. A deliberate choice to strip away any pretense of family reunion and immediately establish the serious, legal nature of the encounter. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs as she walked in, Elias's hand a firm, reassuring anchor at the small of her back. Chapter 3. The Davies were already there, their faces a repugnant tableau of feigned innocence and simmering greed. Mrs. Davies, always the more theatrical, lunged forward as soon as they entered, her arms outstretched. "Arya, my darling girl, we were so worried. Why haven't you called your loving parents?" Her voice was sickly sweet, a performance so transparent it made Arya's stomach churn. Mr. Davies, ever the silent enabler, gave a weak, sycophantic smile. The presence of the Dawn customer had become a quiet, almost sacred, constant in Arya's otherwise chaotic life. He was a silent anchor in her desolate world, a steady silhouette against the backdrop of her fleeting existence. Their interactions remained minimal, a nod, a polite hello. The quiet exchange of goods and money, but his unwavering routine brought an unexpected sense of rhythm to her fragmented days. He was the one person who seemed to exist without an agenda, a comforting anomaly in her deeply cynical view of humanity. He knew nothing of her struggles, yet his unspoken acknowledgement of her presence, however small, was a balm to her scarred soul. Elias stepped slightly in front of Arya, his posture commanding, his gaze like ice. "Mr. and Mrs. Davies," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries. We are here to finalize the severance of your legal and personal ties with Arya Beaumont. As you are aware, our firm has compiled an extensive dossier on your conduct over the past decade. One particularly grueling pre-dawn shift. The quiet sanctuary of the convenience store was shattered. A customer, reeking of stale alcohol and aggression, stumbled in. His eyes, bleary and bloodshot, fixed on Arya with an unnerving intensity. He grabbed a pack of cigarettes, his movements clumsy, and then slammed them onto the counter, glaring at her. "Hey, pretty face too slow today? Huh? Or are you just trying to shortchange me?" His voice was slurred, laced with menace. Arya's heart lurched. Her past experiences had taught her to freeze, to become invisible, to avoid confrontation at all costs. She felt the familiar grip of fear tightening around her throat. Mrs. Davies's saccharine smile faltered. "What conduct we raised her, she owes us everything," she shrieked, her voice cracking with indignation. Sir, your total is—" Arya managed to croak, her voice barely a whisper. Elias merely raised an eyebrow, a gesture that spoke volumes. "On the contrary, Mrs. Davies, the evidence suggests that you systematically exploited and abused her, both emotionally and financially. We have documented every instance of forced labor, every fabricated debt, every abusive outburst, every threat. We have sworn affidavits from former neighbors who witnessed your neglect, and medical records outlining the psychological toll you inflicted." He gestured to his legal team, who sat impassively, binders stacked before them. "We are prepared to pursue criminal charges for child endangerment, fraud, and severe emotional distress. The media, I assure you, would find your story quite compelling." He scoffed, leaning over the counter, his breath hot and foul. "What's the matter? Kitten cat got your tongue, or are you just used to keeping quiet when a man talks?" His words were a cruel echo of her foster father's taunts, sending a wave of nausea through her. She instinctively recoiled as his hand reached out, aiming for her arm. The Davies paled. Their practiced outrage crumbled into genuine fear. Mr. Davies, who had remained silent, now stammered, You can't do that. We're family. We made sacrifices for her." Just as her body tensed for the inevitable, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the tense air. "Sir, I believe you are mistaken. The young lady has been nothing but efficient." It was then, as the last vestiges of their facade shattered, that Arya found her voice. Years of suppressed rage, of swallowed pain, of silent suffering, burst forth, not in a scream, but in a clear, resonant declaration. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a cold fury that surprised even Elias. Arya looked up, startled. Standing by the entrance, seemingly materializing out of the shadows, was the dawn customer, Elias Thorne. He stood impeccably dressed, as always, his gaze fixed on the drunk man. There was no aggression in his stance, but an undeniable power emanated from him, a quiet command that instantly sobered the atmosphere. The drunk man spun around, confused. "Who the hell are you?" "Sacrifices." Arya's voice was low, laced with a tremor of pure contempt. "You sacrificed my childhood, my education, my dignity. You sacrificed my dreams on the altar of your greed. You fed me scraps, called me names, and worked me until I collapsed. You threw me out into a storm with nothing but the clothes on my back, calling me a curse, saying I was worthless." Her voice rose, raw with years of unaddressed trauma. "Do you remember the night you locked me out when I was sick, or when you made me work 2 jobs to pay for your gambling debts? Do you remember any of it?" The night swallowed her whole. Rain lashed down, each drop a stinging rebuke against her face, while the thunder, not merely sound, vibrated through her very bones. Slam. The heavy front door crashed shut, an area crumpled to the wet ground. Around her, her meager belongings torn clothes. A tattered backpack lay soaking in puddles. "We don't need you anymore." Get out of my house! You cursed girl. Her foster mother's shrill scream cut through the downpour, its venom sharper than any physical blow. Her foster father's icy gaze swept over her, treating her as if she were a ghost, an insignificant speck. Arya was cast out. After 10 years with the people she had called family, she was thrown into the desolate night, unprotected, amidst a merciless storm. Her words, direct and unwavering, struck them like physical blows. The Davies recoiled, their faces contorted in a mixture of guilt, shame, and a desperate, fleeting attempt at self-preservation. They tried to interrupt, to deny, but Arya pressed on, the dam having finally broken. A concerned citizen, Elias replied, his voice level, who will not hesitate to call the authorities if you continue to harass this employee. His eyes, usually deep and tranquil, now held a glint of steel. The drunk man, perhaps sensing the unyielding resolve in Elias's words, hesitated. He mumbled a curse, slammed some crumpled bills on the counter, and stumbled out of the store, muttering incoherently about nosy bastards. This is not a negotiation, she continued, her voice now steady, her gaze unwavering. This is a statement. You are no longer part of my life. I sever every tie. There will be no money, no contact. If you ever attempt to approach me, my family, or my company again, Elias will ensure you face the full legal consequences. You will regret the day you ever laid eyes on me. The sudden silence that fell after he left was heavy, punctuated only by Arya's ragged breaths. Her hands were trembling, and her vision blurred. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding her breath until a wave of dizziness washed over her. Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his eyes reflecting immense pride. She had faced her demons, not just survived them, but conquered them. He then turned to his legal team. The terms are clear. Proceed with the necessary legal filings to ensure their complete and permanent disassociation from Arya. Elias walked over to the counter. His gaze softened as he looked at her. Are you all right? His voice was gentle, filled with a genuine concern she hadn't heard directed at her in years. Arya tried to nod, but a lump formed in her throat. She couldn't speak. He noticed the faint red marks where her own fingers had dug into her arm, a subconscious act of self-preservation. He reached over the counter, not to touch her, but to carefully pick up a small, sealed packet of tissues from a display rack. Defeated, exposed, and stripped of their power, the Davies mumbled desperate threats that quickly turned into pathetic pleas. But their words held no sway. Elias's team, efficient and ruthless, quickly escorted them out, their exit a stark contrast to their arrogant arrival. Here, he placed them gently beside her hand. You look shaken. Take a moment. He then calmly paid for his usual items, his movements unhurried, giving her space. It might be wise to consider reporting this incident to the police, or at least to the store management. Arya, he used her name, not a formal title, a small yet profound gesture of recognition. Arya stood there, breathing deeply, the weight of years finally lifting from her shoulders. The room, once suffocating with their presence, now felt clean, purified. Elias pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as she finally allowed the tears, not of pain, but of profound, unburdened liberation, to fall. The past was gone. The chains were broken. She was free. Thank you, she finally managed, her voice hoarse. Thank you so much. You saved me. With the final, liberating confrontation behind her, Arya felt as though a crushing weight had been lifted from her soul. The Davies were gone, their insidious presence banished from her life, leaving behind a clean, albeit still tender, wound. Now, the daunting yet exhilarating task of fully reclaiming her identity and stepping into her rightful place as the Beaumont heiress lay before her. Elias, ever the steadfast anchor, was by her side, guiding her through the intricate dance of family reunions and corporate immersion. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a fleeting warmth in his sharp eyes. It was nothing. Just be careful. He turned and left, as always, without further fanfare. His departure left behind a vacuum, but also a new, bewildering sensation within Arya. The initial days were a blur of meetings. Elias meticulously organized introductions to various members of the Beaumont family, carefully navigating the complex dynamics. Arya met a bewildering array of relatives, each with their own history, their own expectations. Her grand aunt, Eleanor Beaumont, remained a pillar of unwavering warmth, her presence a constant reassurance. Eleanor shared stories of Arya's parents, painting a picture of the loving, vibrant individuals she had lost, slowly piecing together the fragments of Arya's forgotten childhood. This connection was a profound healing balm, filling the void left by years of emotional neglect. That night, something fundamentally shifted inside her. The impenetrable wall of mistrust she had built around her heart developed its first crack. He had defended her, a complete stranger, without any apparent motive. His kindness wasn't a calculated maneuver. It was a simple act of human decency. It was the first time in her life that someone had actively protected her, not exploited her. She spent the rest of her shift, and much of her restless sleep, replaying the scene. Who was he, this Dawn customer who carried such quiet authority? And why had he, of all people, chosen to see her, truly see her? When the rest of the world looked away, a tiny, fragile bud of hope, long dormant, began to unfurl in the desolate landscape of her soul. Yet, not all family encounters were so comforting. Some, particularly those who had seen their own positions or potential inheritances shift with Arya's return, regarded her with thinly veiled suspicion. A distant cousin, Marcus Beaumont, a man with a perpetually sneering smile, made no secret of his resentment. "So, the long-lost princess returns," he'd remark, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Straight from the humble beginnings. I hope you're ready for the real world, heiress." These barbed comments, though they stung, no longer shattered Arya. She had faced far worse, and with Elias's silent, powerful presence beside her, she could meet their scrutiny with a quiet dignity that disarmed them. Elias Thorne's unexpected intervention at the convenience store had been a turning point, a small crack in the impenetrable fortress Arya had built around her heart. He was no longer just the Dawn customer. He was the stranger who had seen her vulnerability and offered a hand without expectation. His consistent, quiet presence continued to be a soothing balm in her otherwise fractured world. Every morning, he would appear at the same time, buy the same items, and offer a soft, "Good morning, Arya," his eyes holding a depth of understanding that unnerved and intrigued her. Elias was her shadow and her shield. During family gatherings, he wouldn't dominate the conversations, but his authoritative silence and occasional, strategically placed remarks subtly affirmed Arya's position. He'd address any snide comments with a piercing gaze, reminding them of the irrefutable evidence that confirmed her lineage. He ensured that any subtle tests or challenges to her knowledge or legitimacy were met with a calm, well-researched answer, often supplied by the background work his team had done. He wasn't just her lover, he was her advocate, subtly teaching her the intricate rules of this new social and corporate game. She found herself anticipating his visits, a subtle warmth unfurling in her chest whenever the bell above the door chimed to announce his arrival. She tried to analyze his motives, searching for the hidden strings she was so accustomed to, but found none. His kindness felt genuine, disarmingly so. This was a man who seemed to have no need to exploit her, a novel concept that slowly chipped away at her ingrained cynicism. Beyond the family, there was the immense responsibility of the Beaumont group. Arya was no longer merely Elias's administrative assistant, she was the rightful heiress, a fact that had sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Elias meticulously began her immersion into the conglomerate's inner workings. Her days were now filled with high-level briefings, board meetings, and dense financial reports. He taught her how to dissect balance sheets, to predict market trends, and to identify potential threats and opportunities. He arranged for the best tutors in corporate law, finance, and international business, ensuring she received an education far superior to the one she was denied in her youth. One particularly chilly night, as Arya shivered slightly behind the counter, Elias paid for his usual purchases. As she handed him his change, he subtly pushed a small, neatly wrapped pastry across the counter towards her. "For your break," he murmured, his eyes lingering on her for a moment before he turned to leave. Arya stared at the pastry, then at his retreating back. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. He had noticed her cold, her weariness, and offered a comfort she hadn't realized she craved. It was a small act of warmth that chipped away another piece of her wall. "It's like learning a whole new language. Elias," Arya confessed one evening, after hours, hunched over a thick binder filled with complex economic projections, Her head throbbed, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. Another time, while she was restocking the magazine rack, he observed her looking at a business journal, her brow furrowed in concentration. As he approached the counter, he commented, "You seem interested in commerce." Arya, flustered, quickly denied it. "Oh, no, sir, just curious about a world I don't know." He simply nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. The next morning, he left a small, new paperback on the counter for her, a basic guide to business principles, along with his usual items. "Just some light reading," he said with a rare, gentle smile. He remembered, he listened, and he understood her unspoken curiosity. Elias, who had remained in his office, stepped out and leaned against her desk, a small, knowing smile on his face. "It is," he agreed, his voice gentle, "but you're a remarkably quick study, Arya. And you possess something invaluable that no MBA or years of experience can teach. You've built yourself from nothing. You understand the value of every single resource, every opportunity. That perspective, that resilience, is your greatest strength in this world." His unwavering faith in her was the fuel that kept her going, pushing her past moments of self-doubt and exhaustion. These subtle gestures, his consistent presence, and his non-judgmental demeanor slowly coaxed Arya to lower her guard. One quiet dawn, when the store was empty save for the two of them, Elias stood by the counter, sipping his coffee. "Arya," he began, his voice soft, "you carry a heavy burden. I can see it." He pushed her, challenged her, but always with an underlying respect for her inherent intelligence and empathetic nature. He encouraged her to voice her opinions in meetings, to ask difficult questions, to challenge conventional thinking. As she delved deeper into the operations of the Beaumont Group, Arya began to realize that reclaiming her legacy wasn't merely about inheriting wealth or power. It was about understanding a vast, intricate machine that bore her family's name and learning how to wield its influence responsibly. She learned about the history of her family, their successes and failures, filling in the blanks of a childhood brutally erased. His words pierced through her practiced composure. For years, she had hidden her pain, but he had seen it. Hesitantly, she began to speak. She told him about her childhood in the orphanage, the constant emotional abuse and financial exploitation by her foster parents, the relentless labor, and the crushing loneliness that had been her only constant companion. Her voice trembled, but once she started, the words flowed, years of suppressed pain pouring out. He listened, utterly still, his deep eyes never leaving her face. There was no pity, no judgment, just profound, unwavering attention. Her unique perspective, honed by years of hardship, proved surprisingly valuable. She saw inefficiencies where others saw tradition, and identified opportunities for social impact where others saw only profit margins. She proposed initiatives that blended corporate growth with community welfare, often surprising the seasoned executives. With Elias, her steady partner, strategist, and confidant, by her side, Arya felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of her past trauma and his unwavering loyalty, deepened with each shared challenge, solidifying into something unbreakable, a profound shared destiny. When she finished, a heavy silence hung in the air. Elias finally spoke, his voice laced with a raw honesty that surprised her. "I cannot pretend to fully understand your pain, Arya, but I know what loneliness feels like. I've lived with it, too." He then revealed glimpses of his own life, the immense pressure of inheriting and expanding Thorne Industries at a young age, the isolation that came with power, the constant vigilance against those who sought to exploit him, the lack of genuine connection in a world of superficiality. He spoke of the burden of expectations, the relentless drive, and the quiet yearning for something real. Amidst the dizzying whirlwind of reclaiming her identity and immersing herself in the complexities of the Beaumont Group, a more profound transformation was taking place in Arya's life. The quiet connection she shared with Elias had, without her conscious realization, deepened into an undeniable, powerful love. He was no longer just her rescuer, her mentor, or her protector. He was the very cornerstone of her new world, the quiet heartbeat of her happiness. Their shared vulnerability forged an unspoken bond. They were two solitary souls, adrift in different worlds, yet bound by the invisible threads of loneliness and a yearning for understanding. He offered her solace, and she, unknowingly, became his confidant. Elias Thorne, a man whose life had always been meticulously controlled, dictated by logic and strategic foresight, found himself utterly vulnerable in the face of his feelings for Arya. His devotion to her transcended the professional respect he held for her sharp mind and resilience. It was a fierce, protective, and deeply tender love that defied all the calculated risks he normally weighed. He had always believed in order, in predictable outcomes. But Arya was a beautiful, unpredictable force, and he loved her for it. Then, one morning, Elias made an offer that would irrevocably alter the course of her life. He watched her meticulously organize a delivery, her efficiency clear despite her exhaustion. "Arya," he said, his voice calm yet firm, "I believe you have untapped potential. My company, Thorne Industries, has an opening for an administrative assistant. It's an entry-level position, but it offers stability, fair pay, and opportunities for growth. Would you consider it?" Their shared moments, often stolen between demanding corporate meetings, became the most cherished parts of her day. A quiet dinner at his apartment, where he would listen patiently to her anxieties about the Beaumont Group's internal politics. A spontaneous drive to the coastline, where they would simply sit and watch the waves, finding solace in the vast, indifferent ocean. These were not grand romantic gestures, but the quiet, intimate moments that wove their lives inextricably together. Arya's breath caught in her throat. A stable job. A real job. With prospects. It felt like a fantasy. Her mind reeled with doubts and fears. Was this another trap? Was she being naive? But as she looked into Elias's eyes, she saw only sincerity, a genuine desire to help her, a profound belief in her abilities that she had never found in herself. His quiet confidence was a lighthouse in her storm-tossed world. She knew, deep down, that this was a chance she couldn't afford to refuse. Taking a shaky breath, Arya nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Mr. Thorne, I would." One evening, after a particularly draining board meeting where Arya had faced veiled criticisms about her inexperience from a long-standing executive, she felt a familiar pang of self-doubt. Elias found her in her temporary office, staring blankly at a complex financial report. He didn't ask what was wrong. He simply understood. He walked over, gently took the report from her hands, and pulled her into his arms. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. In that moment, Arya took her first tentative step towards a new life, a path illuminated by the quiet kindness of a man who saw more in her than she had ever seen in herself. The icy walls around her heart, so meticulously built, began to crumble, making way for the fragile, yet resolute, seeds of trust. "They're still trying to undermine me," she murmured, her voice muffled against his suit jacket. "They think I'm just a pawn, a figurehead." Arya's new life at Thorne Industries unfolded with a quiet grace, a stark contrast to the grueling existence she had left behind. The clean, well-lit offices, the polite hum of productivity, and the respectful demeanor of her colleagues were a balm to her long-abused spirit. Elias Thorne, her quiet benefactor, continued to be her anchor. He was not overtly protective, but his presence was a constant, reassuring hum beneath the surface of her new routine. He ensured she had the resources she needed, subtly guided her through unfamiliar corporate landscapes, and his infrequent yet deeply empathetic glances conveyed a trust that she was slowly, tentatively, beginning to internalize. Elias held her tighter. "Let them think what they want. Arya, you know your worth. I know your worth. And soon, the entire world will know it too." His words were a soothing balm, chasing away the shadows of insecurity. She excelled in her administrative role, her meticulous nature and quiet efficiency proving invaluable. The basic business principles Elias had given her sparked a latent curiosity. She devoured the book, then sought out more, spending her evenings in the company library, a vast repository of knowledge she had never had access to. The world of corporate strategy, mergers, and acquisitions, once an abstract concept, slowly began to make sense. Elias often found her there, long after hours, hunched over a thick textbook. He would simply nod, a subtle acknowledgement of her tireless pursuit of knowledge, and sometimes They would discuss a complex concept, her keen questions often surprising him. The whispers about their relationship, which had started as office gossip, were now reaching the ears of high society and the media. The CEO of Thorne Industries and the new Beaumont heiress. An unusual match. Some questioned Elias's motives, suggesting he was merely consolidating power. Others dismissed Arya as an opportunist. These judgments, however, only solidified Elias's resolve. He had faced far worse scrutiny, and he would not allow the world's cynicism to taint the purest thing he had ever found. One damp Tuesday, as the city outside was shrouded in a persistent drizzle, Arya was tasked with organizing old archived documents in the company's historical annex. It was a dusty, cavernous space, filled with relics of Thorne Industries long past, rows upon rows of forgotten files, ancient ledgers, and even discarded office furniture filled the vast room. As she sifted through a heavy leather-bound box marked Miscellaneous pre-2000, her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. She pulled out a tarnished silver locket. It was intricately engraved with a familiar, yet unsettling symbol, a stylized lion's head, encircled by delicate roses. A shiver ran down her spine. The symbol resonated with a fragmented, dreamlike memory from her earliest childhood, before the orphanage. A sense of déjà vu, unsettling and powerful, washed over her. She vaguely remembered a soft lullaby, a scent of roses, and a small, cool object clutched in her hand, bearing that very emblem. It was a whisper from a life she couldn't grasp. Arya carefully cleaned the locket, holding it tight. On its reverse, almost too faint to see, were tiny, crudely etched initials, A.B. Arya Beaumont. The name sent another jolt through her. She recalled a fleeting mention in the orphanage records, a brief, confusing note about a Beaumont adoption attempt. Failed that evening. Unable to shake the feeling, Arya found Elias in his office, still working. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the locket on his polished desk. "Mr. Thorne," she began, her voice barely a whisper. I found this in the archives today. It feels familiar, like I've seen it before, long ago." She explained the vague, fragmented memories, the sense of unreality. As the evening progressed, Elias took the stage to deliver a prepared speech about the charity's mission. But then, to the surprise of everyone, he deviated. His eyes found Arya's in the crowd, and a profound, raw emotion shone in them. "Tonight," he began, his voice resonating through the hushed ballroom, "we are here to support a worthy cause. But I also wish to speak about another cause, one that is deeply personal to me." Elias picked up the locket, his brow furrowed in concentration. His sharp gaze scanned the intricate engraving, then the faint initials. His expression shifted, subtly, imperceptibly. But Arya, who was learning to read him, saw a flicker of intense focus, almost recognition. He didn't dismiss her feelings. Instead, he looked at her with an uncanny intensity. "This is a very old design, Arya, and a very specific one." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "Allow me to look into this for you. This might be more significant than you realize." His words, calm and reassuring, held a promise of answers she dared not hope for. He paused, his gaze never leaving Arya. "Many of you know Arya Beaumont as the newly found heiress of the Beaumont Group. Some may speculate about her past, or about our relationship." His voice gained a powerful intensity. "Let me be clear, Arya is the strongest, most resilient, and most compassionate woman I have ever known. She is not defined by the hardships she endured, but by the incredible grace and courage with which she overcame them. She is a woman of immense integrity, a brilliant mind, and a pure heart." Over the next few days, Elias became even more reserved than usual, his mind clearly preoccupied. He spent hours behind his closed office door, making calls, poring over documents. Arya saw a trusted private investigator, a stern-faced man named Mr. Hahn, frequently entering and exiting Elias's office. She didn't press for details, trusting Elias implicitly. Yet a nervous anticipation coiled in her stomach. What secrets did that locket hold? A collective gasp rippled through the room. Elias Thorne, the notoriously private and calculating CEO, was making a public love confession. Then, the storm broke. Not from Elias, but from the past she had tried to bury. Her phone, a cheap, worn device she rarely used, vibrated incessantly. It was her foster mother. Arya stared at the caller ID, her blood turning to ice. She had blocked their numbers, yet somehow, they had found a way around it. A text message followed, its words dripping with false sweetness and thinly veiled threats. Arya, my dear daughter, we heard you're doing well. So proud. Let's meet, there's so much to talk about. Your loving parents miss you. I have spent my life building an empire, seeking control and stability. But it was in Arya that I found true stability. In her, I found love, understanding, and a partnership that makes me a better man. She is my world, my future, and my everything. He stepped down from the podium, walked directly to Arya, and took her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. Arya, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper audible only to her. I love you. Will you marry me? Arya's hands trembled. The old fear, the suffocating sense of being trapped, threatened to overwhelm her. She knew what they wanted: money, leverage, to cling to her newfound stability like leeches. Just as panic began to set in, Elias's assistant, a quiet woman named Ms. Kim, appeared at her desk. Mr. Thorne would like to see you. Arya. Immediately, the ballroom erupted in a stunned silence, followed by a wave of gasps and then thunderous applause. Arya's eyes welled with tears, her heart overflowing. She had faced abandonment, abuse, and bitter loneliness. Now, the most powerful man she knew, the man who had seen her at her lowest and lifted her highest, was offering her his heart, openly, defiantly, for the entire world to witness. It was not just a proposal, it was a public act of defiance against all who doubted them, a testament to a love forged in adversity, now shining brightly for all to see. Arya walked into Elias's office, her heart pounding. He stood by the vast window overlooking the city, his back to her, an imposing silhouette against the cityscape. He turned slowly, his face grim. Arya, he began, his voice low and serious. I have something to tell you, something that will change everything. He held up a thick file, its cover emblazoned with the familiar lion and rose crest. The locket. It belonged to your biological mother. And you, Arya, are not just an orphan. You are Arya Beaumont, the long-lost heiress to the Beaumont Group, the very same conglomerate Thorne Industries has worked closely with for decades. Arya's resounding yes at the charity gala had echoed through the highest echelons of society, an audacious declaration of love and defiance. Elias's public proposal, broadcast across social media and splashed on the covers of lifestyle magazines, solidified their bond in the eyes of the world. While many marveled at the unexpected romance, a segment of the elite watched with narrowed eyes, their whispers growing louder. The orphan turned heiress, now engaged to a powerful CEO. It was a story too dramatic for some to digest, too disruptive to their carefully structured world. Arya gasped, her legs giving way. The Beaumont Group? She had heard of it, a titan in the corporate world, a name synonymous with power and immense wealth, and she was their daughter. The irony was brutal, agonizing. Her life, steeped in poverty and abuse, had been a lie, a stolen legacy. Tears streamed down her face, a mix of overwhelming shock, grief for a past she never knew, and a bewildered, terrifying hope for a future she couldn't comprehend. Now, Arya truly stepped into her role as a rising figure within the Beaumont Group. Often working side by side with Elias, her days became a whirlwind of executive meetings, strategic planning sessions, and high-stakes negotiations. She quickly proved that her resilience wasn't her only asset. Her sharp mind, honed by years of keen observation and self-study, allowed her to grasp complex business concepts with remarkable speed. She approached challenges with a pragmatic realism that often surprised seasoned executives. Just then, her phone buzzed again. It was another call from her foster mother, louder, more insistent this time. Elias took the phone from her trembling hand. Put it on speaker, he commanded, his eyes fixed on Arya. She did. Arya, you little bitch, don't you dare forget who raised you. You owe us. We know everything about your little CEO. 2. Don't think you can just abandon us now that you're rich. Her foster mother's voice, distorted by the speaker, was pure venom. Arya flinched, the words striking her like physical blows. However, The world of high society and corporate power was a labyrinth of hidden agendas and sharp-edged ambition. Arya quickly learned that not everyone celebrated her ascendance. Jealous rivals within the Beaumont group, particularly those who had once considered themselves rightful contenders for influence, saw her as an unwelcome interloper. Marcus Beaumont, her distant cousin, remained a particularly venomous presence. He would attempt to subtly undermine her in meetings, questioning her proposals, or making snide remarks about her lack of formal training. That's enough. Elias's voice, cold and sharp as ice, cut through the phone. This is Elias Thorne. Arya is under my protection now. If you ever contact her again, or attempt to spread any false rumors, I will ensure you face the full force of the law for your past actions. Understand? He didn't wait for a reply, simply ended the call. Perhaps Ms. Beaumont, with her unique background, might not fully grasp the intricacies of international finance. He'd comment during a presentation, a smirk playing on his lips. Arya stared at him, tears still flowing freely. He was her protector, her shield against the cruelty of her past. He stepped closer, pulling her into a strong, comforting embrace. His arms were solid, unwavering, a sanctuary in the midst of the storm. "It's all right, Arya," he murmured, his voice a deep rumble against her ear. "You're safe now. I will make sure no one ever hurts you again. Your real life, your real legacy, begins now." His words, filled with a fierce promise, were the first truly secure foundation she had ever known. Arya, however, had learned to convert her past vulnerabilities into strengths. She met his condescension with a calm, analytical response, often citing data Elias had provided or knowledge she had painstakingly acquired. She didn't engage in emotional outbursts. Instead, she chose logic and facts, disarming her detractors with quiet competence. Elias, ever vigilant, would subtly reinforce her arguments, his unwavering support a silent, formidable deterrent against overt attacks. The truth of Arya's identity, revealed in Elias's office, hung heavy in the air, a staggering weight of lost time and stolen legacy. The initial shock had given way to a whirlwind of emotions, a searing pain for a past denied, a simmering rage at the deception, and a terrifying, yet exhilarating sense of potential. Elias, ever the steadfast presence, remained by her side, his solid embrace a tangible anchor in her turbulent world. He was her unwavering shield, promising to protect her from the shadows of her past that now threatened to consume her. Manipulative business partners, eager to exploit the newcomer heiress, also emerged from the woodwork. They would propose dubious deals or attempt to push through unfavorable contracts, hoping Arya would be too naive to see through their schemes. But Arya's years of navigating the deceit of her foster parents had given her an uncanny ability to read people, to sense dishonesty. She scrutinized every document, asked piercing questions, and when something felt off, she would bring it to Elias. Together, they uncovered several attempts at corporate espionage and financial misdirection, thwarting them before any real damage could be done. The first and most immediate threat came from her foster parents. News of Arya's newfound status, perhaps a calculated leak by Elias's meticulous investigator, had undoubtedly reached them. Their insidious text messages and calls, now tinged with a desperate, false sweetness, were a constant assault on her fragile peace. They demanded money, threatened to invent scandalous stories to ruin her reputation. Their greed and insatiable maw, the old fears, the deep-seated trauma of their abuse, resurfaced. Making her tremble, she wanted to disappear, to hide from their venomous grasp. But Elias wouldn't let her. "They underestimated you," Elias observed one evening, after they had successfully foiled a complex attempt by a rival company to steal intellectual property. "They saw a girl from the streets, not a woman forged by fire. You don't have to face them alone." "Arya," Elias said, his voice firm, his eyes holding a fierce protective glint. "Let me handle this." Arya smiled, a genuine, confident smile that reached her eyes. "They still don't realize that the streets taught me more about survival than any business school ever could." Arya, still raw from the revelation, hesitated. She had always fought her own battles, albeit poorly. But this was different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming a life, about justice. She looked at Elias, at the unwavering confidence in his gaze, and for the first time, truly surrendered her burden to someone else. "Okay," she whispered, "but I want to be there. I need to be there." Her compassionate leadership style, a stark contrast to the cutthroat tactics often employed in the corporate world, began to set her apart. She advocated for employee welfare, pushed for sustainable practices, and championed philanthropic initiatives, much to the initial skepticism of some traditional board members. Profit and purpose can coexist, she argued passionately during a heated debate about a new social responsibility program. A company's true wealth lies not just in its balance sheets, but in its impact on society. Elias stood firmly by her side, lending his weight to her progressive ideas, often providing the strategic framework to make them financially viable. Elias arranged the meeting at a neutral, intimidating location, a sleek, modern conference room at Thorne Industries. When her foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Davies, arrived, their faces were a grotesque mix of feigned concern and thinly veiled avarice. They immediately launched into a theatrical display of affection, stretching their hands out to Arya. "Arya, my dear girl, we knew you'd make it big. Your loving parents always believed in you." The media, initially fascinated by the Cinderella story, now began to focus on Arya's growing influence and her innovative approach. They praised her quiet strength and her commitment to ethical business practices. She was becoming a force in her own right, her presence increasingly indispensable to the Beaumont Group. She was no longer just Elias's fiancée or the newly found heiress. She was Arya Beaumont, a leader, a visionary, a woman who defied expectations and shaped her own destiny. The challenges were immense, but with Elias's unwavering love and guidance, and her own indomitable spirit, Arya was proving that true worth was earned, not just inherited. Arya flinched, the words a sickening mockery of her reality. Elias, seated beside her, cleared his throat, his presence a palpable force in the room. "Mr. and Mrs. Davies," he began, his voice calm, yet resonating with authority. "Let's be clear. Your relationship with Arya is not one of love or genuine care. We have compiled extensive documentation of your systematic exploitation and emotional abuse of her over the past decade. Every dime she earned, every debt she was forced to shoulder, every instance of psychological torment has been meticulously recorded. The corporate world, once a daunting labyrinth, had become Arya's battlefield, and she was proving to be a formidable warrior. Her quiet competence, combined with Elias's strategic brilliance, had already thwarted several attempts to undermine her. Yet, a final, more insidious threat loomed, one that promised to not only destabilize the Beaumont Group but also bring the darkest shadows of her past back into the light. The fake smiles on the Davies' faces evaporated, replaced by expressions of shock and then fury. "What are you talking about? We raised her. We gave her a home." "Mr. Davies blustered, his voice cracking. Marcus Beaumont, her distant cousin and perennial rival, had not accepted Arya's assent. Fueled by a toxic cocktail of entitlement and envy, he had been secretly siphoning funds from a crucial Beaumont Group subsidiary, funneling them into a shell company controlled by a rival conglomerate. His plan was audacious: weaken the Beaumont Group, trigger a leadership crisis, and then, in the ensuing chaos, seize control, all while pinning the blame on Arya's supposed inexperience. He was also secretly colluding with her former foster parents, the Davies, promising them a cut if they could publicly discredit Arya and create a diversion. A home where she was treated as a servant, forced to work illegally, and consistently threatened and belittled. Elias's tone sharpened, cutting through their denials like a surgeon's scalpel. He slid a thick binder across the table. "This contains detailed financial records, witness testimonies from former neighbors, and medical reports documenting the toll your actions took on Arya. We have enough evidence to pursue charges of child exploitation, fraud, and severe emotional distress." Arya, however, had long suspected Marcus. Her years of navigating the deceit of her foster parents had sharpened her instincts for manipulation. Working in tandem with Elias's forensic accounting team, they meticulously uncovered Marcus's intricate web of embezzlement and betrayal. The evidence was irrefutable, a meticulously documented trail of illicit transactions and clandestine meetings. Mrs. Davies's face drained of color. "You can't do this. We're family." The climax arrived during the annual Beaumont Group shareholders meeting. a highly anticipated event where major strategic decisions were announced. Marcus, oblivious to the net tightening around him, planned his grand exposé. He intended to publicly discredit Arya, painting her as incompetent and emotionally unstable, perhaps even hinting at her questionable past, while subtly implying his own readiness to step in. He even had the Davies hidden in the audience, ready to create a public scene if prompted, hoping to humiliate Arya on a grand stage. It was then, buoyed by Elias's unwavering support, that Arya found her voice. Years of suppressed rage, pain, and humiliation surged to the surface. But instead of overwhelming her, they fueled a quiet, steel-like resolve. She looked directly at her foster parents, her voice, though trembling slightly, clear and resonant. Family. You were never my family. You took me in, not out of love, but for money. You stole my childhood, my education, my dignity. You called me cursed, useless, a burden. You threw me out into the rain with nothing. Do you know what that feels like to be discarded like trash? As Marcus began his prepared speech, a smirk playing on his lips, Elias signaled to Arya. She rose, her posture confident, her eyes locking with Marcus's. Marcus! Arya's voice rang clear and steady across the hushed auditorium. Before you continue, I believe there's a matter of immediate importance we need to address. Elias knew it was time for a public declaration, not just for Arya's sake, but for his own. He wanted the world to know. He wanted her to know unequivocally that he was hers. He chose a high-profile charity gala, an event attended by the city's elite, including many who had whispered behind their backs. Arya, radiant in a simple yet elegant gown chosen by Elias, was a vision of quiet strength. Marcus frowned, thrown off balance. And what might that be? Cousin, he sneered, emphasizing the last word. This, Arya continued, her voice gaining strength, is where it ends. I am not your daughter. I owe you nothing. And I want you out of my life, permanently. She looked at Elias, who gave her a subtle, encouraging nod. Elias has made it clear what will happen if you ever contact me again. Consider this your final warning. Our relationship is over. The integrity of this company, Arya retorted, her voice gaining strength, and the integrity of its leadership. She then, with the help of Elias, projected a series of damning financial reports and transaction records onto the main screen, detailing Marcus's illicit activities, the siphoned funds, and his secret dealings with the rival conglomerate. Each slide was accompanied by a concise, irrefutable explanation from Arya, delivered with a calm, almost surgical precision. Mr. and Mrs. Davies, finally comprehending the gravity of their situation and the formidable force standing behind Arya, shrank in their seats. Their bluster had vanished, replaced by a desperate fear. They mumbled a few incoherent protests, but Elias merely gestured to Mr. Hahn, who then escorted them out of the room. The room erupted in gasps. Shareholders murmured, their faces a mix of shock and outrage. Marcus's face turned ashen, his planned speech forgotten. He tried to deny it, to bluster, but Arya had anticipated his every move. She presented audio recordings of his conversations, implicating him directly. The evidence was overwhelming. The air felt lighter, cleansed. Arya leaned back, a profound sense of exhaustion mixed with liberation washing over her. The bitter taste of her past, so long a constant presence, had finally begun to recede. Elias reached across the table, taking her hand. His touch was warm, reassuring. You were incredible, Arya, he murmured, his eyes reflecting immense pride. You faced them. You won. Cornered. Marcus's composure completely shattered. In a desperate, rage-fueled outburst, he turned to the Davies, who were now nervously shifting in their seats in the back. You do something. Tell them about her past. Tell them everything. Tears, this time not of pain but of release, streamed down her face. She had done it. She had finally severed the toxic ties that bound her to a cruel past. With Elias by her side, she felt truly free for the first time in her life. This wasn't just justice. It was a profound act of self-reclamation. The chains had been broken, and the path to her true legacy lay clear before her. Mrs. Davies, startled, took a hesitant step forward, about to utter some fabricated lie. But before she could speak, Elias's security team, strategically placed, moved swiftly. Two large guards quietly but firmly escorted the bewildered Davies out of the room. At the same time, the police, alerted by Elias, entered the auditorium and placed Marcus under arrest. The scene was chaotic, but quickly brought under control. With the shadow of her foster parents finally lifted, Arya could breathe. The severance had been brutal, but necessary, leaving her with a profound sense of liberation. Now, the overwhelming task of reclaiming her true identity and legacy lay before her, a daunting mountain to climb. Elias Thorne, true to his word, remained her unwavering guide, his presence a steady hand amidst the swirling uncertainty. The room, initially in disarray, settled into a stunned silence. Arya stood tall, her eyes sweeping over the shareholders. "This company will not tolerate corruption or deceit," she declared, her voice firm and resolute. "We will rebuild on a foundation of transparency and trust. The Beaumont Group's future is secure, and it will be built on integrity." The first step was reconnecting with the Beaumont family. Elias carefully orchestrated the initial meetings, sensitive to Arya's fragility and the shock the family would experience. She met a bewildering array of relatives, distant cousins, great-aunts, and most importantly, the closest surviving kin, an elderly grand-aunt, Eleanor Beaumont, and a younger, somewhat cautious, second cousin, Richard Beaumont. Eleanor, a woman of formidable presence with eyes that seemed to see into her soul, embraced Arya with genuine tears. "My dear child," she whispered, her voice trembling, "we never gave up hope. Never." This warm reception from at least one corner of her true family offered a balm to Arya's long-aching heart. Her words resonated, instilling confidence and earning a round of thunderous applause. Justice had been served, swiftly and decisively. Marcus's reputation, and that of her foster parents, lay in tatters, their avarice leading to their ultimate downfall. Arya, having faced the last vestiges of her painful past head-on, emerged not just as the rightful heiress, but as a true leader, powerful and compassionate, with Elias, her beloved partner, standing proudly by her side. Their bond, forged in the fires of adversity, was now stronger than ever, their shared triumph a testament to their unwavering love and resilience. However, not all reactions were as welcoming. Some relatives, particularly those who had benefited from her presumed absence, viewed her sudden return with suspicion, if not outright resentment. Whispers followed her. "Where has she been all this time? Is she really a Beaumont? Is this some kind of scheme?" They watched her, subtly testing her knowledge of family history, gauging her composure, trying to find a crack in her new facade. Arya, though, had learned resilience in a harsher school. She met their scrutiny with quiet dignity, answering their questions honestly, her vulnerability mixed with a growing inner strength. Chapter 15. Elias was a constant, subtle presence during these difficult introductions. He wouldn't dominate the conversations, but his authoritative silence and occasional pointed remarks quelled any overt hostility. He subtly affirmed her identity, reminding others of the meticulous investigation that had confirmed her lineage. He wasn't just her protector, he was her advocate, strategically navigating the complex web of family politics that had been alien to her. The dust settled, the echoes of Marcus Beaumont's downfall fading into the annals of corporate history. Justice had been served, swiftly and irrevocably. Arya, having faced the last, most insidious remnants of her painful past, emerged not just as the rightful heiress, but as a leader forged in fire. Her quiet competence, once underestimated, was now widely recognized as a formidable strength, complemented perfectly by Elias's strategic brilliance. Beyond the family, there was the legacy itself, the Beaumont Group. Arya was no longer just an administrative assistant. She was now the true heiress, a fact that sent ripples through the corporate world. Elias began to introduce her to the inner workings of the conglomerate, starting with high-level briefings and strategic meetings. He taught her to read balance sheets, to understand market trends, and to identify potential threats and opportunities. He provided her with the best tutors and mentors, patiently guiding her through the intricacies of corporate law, finance, and international business. With Marcus and his conspirators neutralized, the Beaumont Group entered a new era of transparency and ethical leadership. Arya, with Elias by her side, spearheaded initiatives that redefined the company's public image and operational philosophy. She launched a groundbreaking corporate social responsibility program, allocating significant resources to philanthropic endeavors that resonated deeply with her own journey. A particular focus was placed on supporting orphanages and providing educational opportunities for at-risk youth, ensuring that no child would suffer the same abandonment and exploitation she had endured. Her compassion, once a silent burden, became her greatest asset, earning her the genuine respect and loyalty of employees and stakeholders alike. "It's like learning a new language, Elias," Arya confessed one evening, after a particularly dense meeting about global investments. She felt overwhelmed, the sheer scale of it paralyzing. Elias, too, found a new dimension to his life. His empire, Thorn Industries, continued to thrive, but his focus had broadened. He no longer sought power for its own sake, but as a tool for positive change, a vision he shared wholeheartedly with Arya. Their professional partnership was seamless, their personal bond even more so. Elias, sitting across from her in his study, closed the heavy business report he was reviewing. "It is," he agreed, his voice gentle. "But you're a fast learner, Arya, and you have a perspective no one else in this room has. You've built from nothing. That's a strength, not a weakness." His unwavering faith in her was her greatest asset. He pushed her, challenged her, but always with an underlying respect for her inherent intelligence and empathy. Their wedding, a quiet, intimate affair, was a testament to their love, not a lavish display of wealth, but a sacred union of two souls who had found each other against all odds. Elias, the stoic CEO, had softened, his eyes now perpetually alight with a tender devotion for Arya. And Arya, the once shattered orphan, was radiant, her face reflecting a profound peace she had never dreamed possible. She learned that reclaiming her legacy wasn't just about money or power. It was about understanding a vast, intricate machine that bore her family's name. It was about recognizing the responsibilities that came with such influence. Elias also made sure she understood the history of her family, the good and the bad, helping her to form a complete picture of who she was and where she came from. He shared stories of her parents, giving her glimpses of the people they were, filling in the blanks of a childhood brutally erased. Married life with Elias was everything she had yearned for and more. Their home was a sanctuary of warmth and understanding. Mornings began with Elias's gentle touch, the scent of freshly brewed coffee, and quiet conversations that effortlessly flowed from corporate strategy to shared dreams. Evenings were spent cooking together, Arya experimenting with new recipes, Elias teasing her playfully as he cleaned up. The simple acts of daily life, once solitary struggles, were now shared joys. As she delved deeper, Arya began to see her life before Elias not as a curse, but as a unique preparation. Her street smarts, her ability to read people, her resilience against adversity, these were invaluable tools in the cutthroat world of corporate power. She wasn't just a figurehead, she was a survivor with a sharp mind and an unwavering moral compass. And with Elias, her steady partner, strategist, and confidant, by her side, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of her past trauma and his unwavering loyalty, was deepening into something unbreakable, a shared destiny rather than a fleeting romance. Arya's inner wounds, though deeply etched, were finally healing. The nightmares that had plagued her for years slowly receded, replaced by dreams of a vibrant future. She no longer flinched at loud noises or shied away from intimacy. Elias's unwavering love had taught her to trust, to open her heart, to believe in her own worth. He saw the scars of her past, but he loved her not despite them, but because they were part of the incredible, resilient woman she had become. He helped her reclaim not just a lost fortune, but a lost self. The revelations in Elias's office had been a cataclysm, shaking the very foundations of Arya's identity. She was no longer just the survivor of a brutal foster home. She was Arya Beaumont, the lost heiress, her life a meticulously constructed lie built on deceit and greed. The news brought a tsunami of conflicting emotions, profound grief for the stolen years, a simmering anger at the injustice, and a bewildered, terrifying hope for a future she couldn't yet grasp. Elias, ever the anchor in her storm, remained by her side, his presence a tangible reassurance. One serene autumn afternoon, years after their marriage, Arya and Elias sat on a wooden bench in their flourishing garden, a testament to their shared efforts and quiet contentment. Bees buzzed lazily among the late-blooming flowers, and the scent of rosemary wafted on the gentle breeze. Arya leaned her head on Elias's shoulder, his arm warm around her. He wasted no time. Over the next few days, Elias orchestrated a series of private, carefully managed meetings designed to integrate Arya back into her true family. He ensured she was surrounded by legal and emotional support, shielding her from the initial shockwaves her return would undoubtedly cause. The first meeting was with her grand aunt, Eleanor Beaumont, a matriarch whose eyes, though aged, held a sharp intelligence. Eleanor's embrace was a flood of warmth, a genuine cry of relief and regret. "My dear child," she murmured, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "We never stopped looking, never gave up hope." This first taste of unconditional family love was a balm to Arya's aching soul, a stark contrast to the transactional love she had known. "Remember that night." "Elias," Arya murmured, her voice soft, a hint of old pain mixed with profound gratitude. "When I was sitting in the rain, thinking my life was over, but not all the family reunions were filled with such warmth. Other, more distant relatives, those who had subtly benefited from her presumed death or disappearance, regarded her with thinly veiled suspicion and resentment. Whispers followed her, questions laced with doubt. Where has she been all this time? Is she truly a Beaumont, or is this some elaborate scheme? They scrutinized her every move, testing her knowledge of family history, gauging her reactions, searching for any sign of a crack in the carefully constructed facade. Arya, though, had learned resilience in a much harsher school. She met their scrutiny with quiet dignity, answering honestly, her vulnerability mixed with a growing inner strength that surprised even herself. Elias squeezed her hand. I remember seeing something in your eyes. Even then, a spark, a fire that refused to be extinguished." He kissed the top of her head. "You saved yourself. Arya, I just cleared the path." Elias was her silent advocate, a constant, powerful presence. He didn't dominate the conversations, but his authoritative silence and occasional, pointed remarks quelled any overt hostility. He subtly affirmed her identity, reminding anyone who dared question it of the meticulous investigation that had confirmed her lineage. He wasn't just her protector, he was her strategist, navigating the intricate web of family politics that was utterly alien to her. Arya smiled, looking out at the beautiful garden they had cultivated together. "Perhaps, but you showed me what was possible. You showed me what love truly meant." She turned her head, looking into his eyes, which held a universe of devotion. "And you helped me build all of this. Beyond the family, there was the legacy itself, the Beaumont Group, a corporate behemoth whose very name resonated with power and immense wealth. Arya was no longer just an administrative assistant. She was the true heiress, a fact that sent ripples of shock and speculation through the corporate world. Elias began to introduce her to the inner workings of the conglomerate, starting with high-level briefings and strategic meetings. He taught her to decipher complex balance sheets, to understand market trends, and to identify potential threats and opportunities. He provided her with the best tutors and mentors, patiently guiding her through the intricacies of corporate law, finance, and international business. It wasn't just the wealth, the power, or the prestigious title that defined her happiness. It was the simple, profound joy of having found a soulmate, a true partner who saw her, loved her, and helped her become the best version of herself. Arya Beaumont, once dumped and discarded, was now deeply loved, profoundly healed, and building a legacy far richer than any inheritance. Their shared journey was a testament to resilience, the enduring power of kindness, and the undeniable truth that sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in what you inherit, but in who you find. It's like learning a new language. "Elias," Arya confessed one evening, after a particularly dense meeting about global investments. She felt overwhelmed, the sheer scale of it paralyzing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more powerful tales of resilience and unexpected love, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new release. We've got more compelling stories waiting for you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're here, Check out our other videos. There's always more to explore. Elias, sitting across from her in his study, closed the heavy business report he was reviewing. "It is?" he agreed, his voice gentle. "But you're a fast learner, Arya, and you have a perspective no one else in this room has. You've built from nothing. That's a strength, not a weakness." His unwavering faith in her was her greatest asset. He pushed her, challenged her, but always with an underlying respect for her inherent intelligence and empathy. He also made sure she understood the history of her family, the good and the bad, sharing stories of her parents, giving her glimpses of the people they were, filling in the blanks of a childhood brutally erased.